They flew in smiling, kissed both my cheeks on the terrace, and by midnight were in my bottling room, seasoning 3 wooden crates marked for a Michelin-starred hotel. I watched it all on the security feed, the gloves, the furtive glances, the careful tampering with individual bottles, and by dawn I'd arranged the pickup that turned their trap into a chain of custody, a confession, and handcuffs for my own daughter's husband. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. My name is Lawrence Vassar. Most folks call me Larry. I'm 71, a grandfather of 2, and I still iron my pocket squares. I live where the hills are stitched in vines and the light at 5 in the afternoon looks like someone ground apricot and honey into the sky. Chianti is not just my address. It is my bloodstream. People call me fancy. They say I glide. I know how it looks, the tailored suits, the vintage Jaguar I drive too slowly along the Cypress Road, the library with first editions, the dining room with a chandelier that throws light like coins. But my wealth isn't inherited. It's bottled. It's the stubbornness of a man who left private banking for grapes, who learned that soil has moods and barrels have secrets. If money is a language, wine is a prayer. I run a small house, Vassar and Daughter. The name started as a joke that grew into a trademark. My wife, Lydia, insisted on it nearly 3 decades ago, when she believed our daughter would grow up between harvests and learn the rhythm of this earth. Daughter was a promise to a future we could touch. For a long time, Anna did love the land. Then America called. It always does. The first time I held my granddaughter, Sophie, on this terrace, she was 6 months old and grabbed my lapel like she had a claim to the vineyard. Now she's 8, living in Boston, sending me drawings of rainbows and wine glasses with grape faces smiling inside them. Children forgive distance better than grandparents do. It was a Thursday when they arrived, Anna and her husband, Jared. Polished man, thin watch, wide smile, ideas that arrive in bursts and collapse in private. He has the restless ambition of someone who believes he can outrun gravity by talking fast. They said they came for the harvest dinner, for family, for Italy in September. On Friday at sunrise, we walked the rows. Sangiovese berries dimpled with dew, wild fennel along the stone wall, a fox darting across the lane. In America, Jared said, hands in pockets, people would pay just for this view, Larry. I could sell the view alone. Then I should charge rent to the sky, I said, and Anna laughed too loudly. Live long enough and you'll hear the wrong note in laughter the way you feel a storm before the first cloud. It started small. Jared asked questions a visitor with a spreadsheet asks, which clients get direct shipments? How do you label private allocations? Who signs for deliveries? Not curious, probing. A banker knows the difference. At lunch he congratulated me on the Michelin hotel placement, a feather for a small house like ours. Exactly how many cases? 12, I said. 3 crates, 4 cases each. I cut my bistecca and watched him tuck away the number. It wasn't hunger. It was arithmetic. Saturday, my cellar master, Rick Carter, mentioned an odd thing. The side door alarm on the bottling room blinked red at 2 a.m. the night before. The log showed a valid badge had opened it. Rick's badge. Only Rick swore his card hadn't left his wallet in months. Maybe a fault. Maybe a glitch. I nodded as if this meant nothing. But when machines whisper, I listen. That night, after dishes and the hum of the dishwasher, I poured a small grappa and slipped into the office behind the tasting room. The old olive press room is a modern brain now. Above the preserved steel hangs a bank of monitors that see in color and in black and white after dark. 12 years ago, when I installed them, Lydia teased me, "Are you a vintner or a prison warden?" "Both, my love." Anyone who tends a living thing knows the line between nurturing and guarding is thin. I rewound the bottling room feed to Friday night. Frames ran backward, empty floor, sleeping forklifts, strapped crates. Then two figures. Hoods up, faces turned, moving with the awkward choreography of people certain of their plan but not their hands. Gloves. A small case. I didn't need to see inside to know what it held. For a grandfather, intent is enough. They approached the three crates bound for the hotel and worked each case slowly, precisely. I won't write a manual for wickedness. Let it be said simply, in each case, certain bottles were tampered with. Badness introduced where my life is a promise of care. When the taller one pushed back his hood to wipe sweat, I saw the jawline. You know your children by the shape their bones make when they're tired. Your children, and the men they marry. I have been many things, a stubborn kid who ran to Milan to avoid farm chores, a banker who learned the mess behind clean numbers, a husband who never won an argument with a woman who deserved to win them all. I have never been colder than I was watching those hands on my wine in my house at 2 in the morning. This story could have ended here if I were a loud man. I could have run downstairs, shouted, torn the night with rage, demanded lies disguised as explanations. But vines reward patience. So do betrayals, if you intend to answer them precisely. I switched camera angles to the corridor by the side door with the badge reader. The shadowed figure held a card to the plate. Red went green. I paused and zoomed. R. Carter. Rick's name. Rick was asleep. That morning, I had shown Anna the whole operation. A family member should have access, she'd murmured. It makes me feel close to Mom. She'd watched exactly which cabinet held the spares. By midnight, they were done. By 12:23, the crates were back as they had been, strapped, sealed, untouched to the casual eye. They slipped out by the herb garden, stepping over the rosemary Lydia planted the spring she scolded me for trimming it crooked. I let the footage run to the end. I raised my glass to Lydia's portrait. Your daughter, I whispered. Our daughter. Knowing a truth is one thing. Feeling its temperature is another. This was very cold. At first light, I broke routine. No walk through the vines. 2 calls instead. First, Carl Manning, my lawyer. Old school. Clothes pressed by angels who used to be tailors. He listens more than he speaks. He drafted the trust that protects this land not just from outsiders but from the impetuousness of blood. We built it after my first heart scare. The house, the cellar, the label, even the name Vassar and daughter, everything sits inside a shell that cannot be cracked by haste, only by time. Time is a weapon if you hold it right. Second, Deputy Commander Mark Randall of the Carabinieri. I've donated wine to their dinners and money to their memorials. I've had coffee in his kitchen at 7 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon, the kind of 2 o'clock that follows funerals. He is not my friend. He is rarer, a fair man. Come see something, I told him. Bring someone who understands seals and signatures. At 8 o'clock, while Anna and Jared took photographs among the vines, I stood with Randall and a young officer in the bottling room. We wore gloves because that's what you do when you respect truth. I pointed to the 3 crates for the hotel. The officer photographed straps, seals, shipping labels. Randall signed a form I printed at 6, meant to be signed at 8 by a man who knows why forms exist. Chain of custody isn't romance, but it protects romance from rot. We moved the crates into my small lab under the office. The lab isn't for drama. It's for the humble science the world trusts me to do every day. Open each case, bottle by bottle, I said. The officer documented and marked. On the 4th bottle of the 2nd case, he paused. He looked at Randall. Then at me. He didn't need to say anything. Randall watched long enough to be certain. He nodded once. We seal these again, he said. With our tape. He wrote his name across each strip, the young officer wrote his beside it. I wrote mine. You'd be surprised what a row of 3 names can do for a story in court, turning alleys into boulevards. Where are these going? I asked. To a place where truth is measured, Randall said. Florence Lab. The hotel will receive their wine. The other wine. Other wine? The young officer asked. The cases that actually contain the bottles the hotel will pour, I said. At dawn, Rick had swapped them, hands steady, silent. The tampered crates were now evidence bound for a laboratory, not a dining room. The hotel would pour Sangiovese that rested quietly in old wood, not in the hands of a man making a point. Some stories you correct before they begin. By noon, the evidence was in a carabinieri van. Randall shook my hand. You will not speak to them of this, he said. Not yet, I replied. Not until I can hear what they think they will gain. Truth tastes better when a liar seasons it himself. Anna offered to make lunch. She used to cook beside her mother, mimicking her gestures, tossing salt above the pot like a blessing. Now she overcooked the pasta and hugged me like someone near a camera. Jared told a story about a new project, a new fund, a new friend who'd made a killing in something called shadow logistics. If he'd read scripture, he'd find the passage about houses on sand encouraging. We drank my rose. He praised it with adjectives that had nothing to do with wine. Forward-facing, he said. On trend. Anna avoided my eyes with the same skill she had at 16, only colder now. At 5, I hosted a tasting for restaurant buyers. On the terrace, the soft pop of a cork, a laugh not held in. Jared hovered, rehearsing future authority. We're exploring expansion, he told a man who buys 3 cases a year and treats each bottle like a holiday. Distribution in Singapore, New York, Dubai. Vassar doesn't expand, the buyer said, smiling at me. Vassar refines. After dinner, candlelight, porchetta, tomatoes that taste like tomatoes, I did what I always do when people eat my food and drink my work, I listened. Then I raised a glass. To family, I said, and to the people who become family when they love what you love. I let my eyes rest on Anna. She colored, not with flattered embarrassment, but with the particular shade of fear that arrives when a door you thought was locked swings inward. Before we part, I said, I have a small film to show you. I clicked the remote. The wall above the sideboard became a screen. The bottling room at night. Time stamp burning in the corner. 2 figures. Hoods. Gloves. A small case. Faces around the table changed, confusion, then comprehension. One buyer closed his eyes and exhaled through his nose like a bull choosing whether to charge a fence. Anna's hand shot across to Jared's wrist. He jerked away, then remembered himself and went still. I let the footage roll until the hood slipped back. I froze the frame with his profile in white light. No mask can hide bone. Another angle, the badge reader blooming green for a card that wasn't the owner's to use. The lights came up slowly, like the room was waking and reluctant to rejoin a reality less civilized than dinner had promised. "Who is your security vendor?" Jared asked tightly. "The sort who doesn't confuse expensive with effective," I said. "Do you know what is in the 3 crates you touched?" Something like relief crossed his face. "Wine," he said, and with a forced laugh, "your precious wine, Larry." "A few bottles." "A stunt." "You tampered with food," I said. "You tampered with something meant for strangers' mouths." "It was never going to reach anyone," he snapped, then softened, leaning forward. "Listen. We had a plan. A harmless scare, some noise online, a recall. Enough to drive a legal complaint, negligence, a little scandal. You sell quickly to cover legal fees and reputation, everyone does. We get liquid, you retire. We help. Nobody gets hurt." All that talk, and he never realized nobody gets hurt always means someone will. "Jared," one buyer said softly, "that is not how the law hears what you just said." "Calm down," he shot back, then turned to me. "Larry, you were never going to face charges. We would have handled." "You would have handled," I repeated, "by handling me." I looked at Anna. "My child. Tell me how you plan to handle me. Your words." She flinched like a girl who has just touched a hot pan. She opened her mouth, closed it, looked at her plate. When her voice came, it wasn't the one she used with her mother. It was the voice people reserve for bureaucrats. "Jared said," she began, stopped, swallowed. She looked at me. For a second, I saw the child she'd been, standing by a fermenter at 9 in a dress ruined with grape skins, laughing because I said it looked better purple. Then the second passed. "I was going to file a temporary petition," she said too quickly, "to take over management in the crisis. To protect the brand. For your own good." There it was. The phrase that ruins more families than vice, for your own good. I nodded slowly. The room was very quiet. A plate clinked as someone set a fork down like a verdict. "Do you know," I said, "what is in those 3 crates right now?" I looked at Jared. "Not what you placed in them. What is in them now?" He hesitated. "Confidence is a house of cards, you don't have to blow, just open a window." "Wine," he said again, softer. "Not wine," I said. "Evidence." He stared. "Those crates were sealed at 8 this morning in the presence of a deputy commander of the Carabinieri," I said. "They left here in a van with a crest and 2 men who believe forms are honest when they're signed in the right order. They're in a lab in Florence right now, where people who don't care about my name will tell a machine to tell them exactly what you put where you had no right to put anything." "How dare you involve the police," Jared said, voice climbing. "This is family." "Family," I said, and the word tasted like iron. "For your own good," he added desperately. "You're old, Larry. This place is too much. We can grow it or sell it, but we can't let it die with you. This is the only way." "The only way," I repeated. "You mean the fastest way." He stood, knocking his chair. "You think a judge will believe you didn't manipulate this? This is Italy. You called your friends. You set us up." I smiled without humor. "My friend is the soil when it's dry, the wind when it's mild, and the law when it's properly written. I called none of them. They come when you don't lie." He moved toward the door. 2 men stood there, quiet in dark suits. Not buyers. Randall had posted them without ceremony. They stepped aside to let him pass. He didn't. There is a moment in certain men when they realize their vocabulary has run out. "Sit down," I said. "Please." He sat. His hands trembled just enough that the spoon clicked against his cup as he stirred. Anna hadn't moved. Her knuckles were white against her napkin. "Anna," I said. "I know your handwriting. You wrote Rick's name on a piece of tape and stuck it over his spare badge. The camera above the cabinet saw you. Little things matter in a place that makes something meant to be swallowed." She started to speak, pressed her lips together, then looked at me, eyes wet. For a second I thought shame had cracked through the crust of rationalization. But her words weren't apology. "You put me on the label," she said, trembling. "Daughter. And you kept me out. Your friends at the co-op, the men in the tasting room, everyone knows it's your show. Mom is gone, and you preferred barrels to me." The room shifted. Not in sympathy for her argument, no. In recognition of how hurt becomes a tool when handed to someone too frightened to use it for anything but cutting. "For a long time," I said, "I preferred a world where you called on Sundays and we talked about weather. I preferred imagining you happy with your city, your life, your love. I never knew I was a brand to you. I thought I was a father." Her face crumpled. For a blink, something human refilled the vessel. Then Jared's hand closed over hers under the table. A small gesture. It flicked the scab off too soon. "This is dramatic," he said. "But it will end. We'll deny everything. We'll say your cameras are false. We'll say you staged it because you're a tyrant who can't stand the idea that your business should live beyond you in other hands." "Perhaps," I said, and lifted my glass. "Sometimes you toast with law. To Vassar and daughter." The next morning, before breakfast, the carabinieri returned with a paper covered in stamps. They searched without noise. They collected what they needed, the small case, still fragrant with whatever they'd used and now simply an object with numbers of its own, the spare badge, a hoodie with a fiber from a particular packing tape stuck to its cuff. They asked Jared and Anna to come in for questioning. They didn't cuff them on my terrace. Randall is not cruel. He is careful. In the driveway, I saw Sophie's drawing taped to my glove box, a smiling wineglass. I went inside and sat. It took 3 days. The Florence lab is not hurried, but it is thorough. On the 4th, a prosecutor with a handshake like a hammer visited with news and options. There would be charges. Tampering with food intended for sale is not a story the state finds charming. I said I understood. Then I asked the thing a father asks when love and law share a table: what happens to my granddaughter while her parents fix their mistake? He studied me. "You are not required to answer the question you asked," he said. "But it speaks well of you that you asked it first." He proposed a path. The law could be stern without being blind. There would be consequences. There would also be a way for Sophie to sleep in a bed holding a history, not a headline. I signed things. Carl watched, satisfied, as architecture bore the weight it was built to bear. The trust held. The farm could not be sold. Even if a hurricane of lawsuits had arrived, the structure was a seawall. Jared's lawyer called. He pitched quiet resolution. Spoke of mistakes, pressure, how fear makes people foolish. He mentioned character references, suggested a public story could hurt my label as well as his client. No one wants your old world brand tied to scandal, he said. You can stop this. I can't stop the truth, I said. I can only frame it. What do you want? An admission from your client and my daughter, I said. In writing. And something else. He signs away any claim to anything with my name on it. He will have nothing to do with Sophie's money, now or later. And he will apologize to the men who lift the picking crates and the women who prune the vines in January with scarves around their hands. He didn't just insult me. He insulted their work. You're poetic, he sniffed. But we can write something. I already have, I said. Carl will send it. Add adjectives if you must. Don't remove verbs. The document was long without being elaborate. It said what happened. Who did what. It said Anna took a thing that wasn't hers and used it to cause what should never happen where food is made. It said Jared planned and executed. It said they were sorry, pressed flat by a cold iron. It said Vassar and daughter would be managed by its current management as long as that management breathes, and afterward by a board Carl already formed from people who love vines as much as money. It said Sophie's education would be provided for in a separate trust. It said the law would proceed. They signed. Anna signed first, her hand shaking so hard the pen left a crescent of ink where she tried to start her name twice. Jared signed like he was buying a rug. He didn't understand the weight of a signature in a room that smells like paper and old wood. Some people never do. Court moved. The prosecutor didn't snarl for headlines. He filed charges as agreed, sought a sentence that kept the city safe and the child safer. Anna stood and wept in a room that smells like dust and polish. Jared's jaw twitched as the judge told him that wicked intent casts the same shadow as result. I sat in the back beside Rick, who wore his best jacket and carried himself like he was at a funeral, which in a way he was. Fallout was loud outside and quiet where we live. I wrote the hotel in Florence, a bottle from each barrel I blend when I am joyful and when I am mournful. I wrote the buyers who'd seen the film on my wall. I said what happened. That no tainted bottle had left our house and never would. That if they needed to step away to feel clean, I would still send a birthday bottle as long as I could sign a label. None stepped away. People respect a man who doesn't flinch when truth is ugly. What remained was family. The first time I saw Sophie after court, she wrapped my legs and held tight like I was the anchor rope of a boat. Mom says you love me, she said. Do you? I do. More than grapes, she asked solemnly. Equal to grapes, I said, and she laughed because she knows I am a man of my absurdities. Anna didn't come to the terrace. She sat under the fig tree. I went to her. She stared at her hands like they weren't attached to anything she understood. I thought, she said hoarsely, that if I didn't act, I'd lose you. That Jared would push me to choose America over here, and I'd choose wrong, and the vineyard would be gone anyway. You were gone long before Jared, I said gently. But you weren't lost. I sat. The fig tree's shade is generous, it forgives. I built a wall around this place not because I don't trust you. I did it because fear ruins good people slowly. I didn't imagine you would try to ruin me quickly. I let the sentence hang. It was hard. It was true. She cried then. Not pretty crying. Not a strategic tear. The kind that shakes your shoulders and pulls your breath like a cork. I didn't touch her. When your child aches, sometimes you must not touch them. A touch forgives too early. We stayed until the sun slipped and swallows started their acrobatics. She wiped her face. What happens to me now? You start with truth, I said. Every morning, write 3 sentences about what is yours to carry. Do your hours. Pay what you must. Learn the names of the men who pick and the women who prune. Stand with Rick in January when your fingers hurt. Pour in the tasting room without acting like wine is something you own. It isn't. It's something you serve. She nodded. She didn't argue. That was new. People say transformation arrives like lightning. It arrives like weather. Slowly. Then all at once. The harvest was good. The Sangiovese became something like red cherries and an old church. We bottled in spring. The label looked the same as ever, cream paper, black script. One change at the bottom, in print so small you might miss it unless you read labels like diaries, in memory of Lydia, for the truth of wine. The first time I poured the new vintage in the tasting room, I stood very straight. I raised the glass to the light. This, I told a couple from Lyon, is what the Hills said last year. What do they say? The woman asked. They say everything, I said. Beware the easy path. Love what's in your care. Men who try to shorten time end up beneath it. Later, in the office, I watched the monitors because habit is part patriotism, part prayer. Cameras don't make you safe. They make you observant. I saw Rick laughing with the young pickers. I saw Anna sweeping the tasting room with the clumsy determination of someone who doesn't want to drop the future. I saw a fox at the property's edge, thin and smart. I saw the vines exhale. Jared didn't come back. His name doesn't pass my lips when I can help it. I hear he has a new plan. I hope his plans hurt no one. The law took its portion and gave back to the community what it thought fair. I didn't ask for more. Revenge is a wine that spoils in the barrel if you leave it too long without checking the bung. On Sophie's 9th birthday, she asked for a cake shaped like a wine barrel. Anna rolled her eyes. I pretended to scold my granddaughter. We cut it on the terrace where the air always smells faintly of rosemary and past decisions. Tell me a story, she said, crumbs at the corner of her mouth. What kind? The kind where the bad people lose. Sometimes the bad people are our people, I said. She thought about that. Then what kind is it? The kind where truth wins, I said. And the people who forgot truth remember themselves again. She nodded like I'd told her a secret she already knew. Maybe children do. The harvest dinner this year was smaller. Fewer speeches. More laughter. At dessert, I stood with my glass and looked up at the chandelier that has watched more toasts than some churches. To family, I said. The one born to us and the one we choose. They raised their glasses. Anna raised hers, eyes steady. I didn't put a film on the wall. The room held its own truth. After everyone left, I walked the rows. The night was a deep, kind blue. I stopped at the old stone wall where Lydia made me promise to add "and daughter" to the label because love is more beautiful when it includes. You were right, I told the dark. And because you were right, I had something to defend.
Hello everyone, and thank you for watching. I truly hope you enjoyed listening to the story as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you did, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel to help support the creation of more stories like this. Have a great day or evening.